Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Otherwise, I'm going to dispense with this and rely on my lung power. Thank you, Julia. Yeah, I'm Andrew Makins, member of Stock Bowls Club for 6 years. This will be my 7th year coming up. But having said that, I was a brief member when in my youth, in the late 70s, I had to pack in playing bowls because of work commitments and trying to forge a career. So bowls is relatively new to me there. Now, I was thinking about this presentation when I was asked to do it, and I was reflecting on it, and indeed when I was starting to put it together, I was thought, well, I'm the youngest member of Stock and Buxbury Bowls Club. Am I actually qualified to be standing here in front of you? Well, there's one gentleman in the audience who I've just recently found out that's actually been bowling for Stock and Buxbury Bowls Club for 50 years. So I think he's probably more qualified to talk about it than I. But I'm going to give it a shot. I recognise many people in the audience, and you'll know that I've been in the village and been associated with the village for many years. And I'll give it a crack. So without further ado, where better to start than perhaps the beginning? Our first president and benefactor lived just across the road, in Greenwoods, Mr. Richard Ellis. His business interests included being the senior partner in a London law firm. He was an estate agent, an auctioneer, a large landowner in his own right, and by all intents and purposes a very wealthy man. In his formative years, he turned a lot of his activities to being more of a altruistic philanthropist, if I can call it that, and showed a great interest in village life and the community as a whole. He was a JP, he was president of Stock Cricket Club, a leading light in the local community Conservative Association, amongst many other things. So he was our benefactor and became president of Stock and Buxbury Bowls Club in 1922, and in fact continued that service until 1944, which was unprecedented really, not only that he was the first president, but secondly, in recent years, the presidency normally only lasts 3 years. He moulded himself very much on the local squire type of persona. Having said that, whilst he was a very generous man, he did still believe, and bearing in mind we're talking in the very early 20s here, of the us and them divide. He was very much a social mixer in the higher echelons of society, and perhaps didn't frequent and mix with perhaps the farm labourers and the working part of the community. He had a daughter. In fact he had 2 sons. Unfortunately they were tragically killed in the First World War, but he had a daughter, Dorothy. She married Admiral Sir Vernon Haggard, which I think I'm right in saying he lived in Stock Lodge, which is the big White House opposite the old rectory. I think he lived there, and Adrian's in the audience, he'd probably know. No, he doesn't know. Okay. I'm pretty sure he lived there, and he became... Pardon?
Little Court.
Little Court. He actually took over the presidency from Richard Adams when he passed away in 1944. As I said, Richard Adams was a very generous man. He gave the ground on which the bowling green sits, of course behind here, or over there rather, and for a peppercorn rent of 1 shilling per year. Initially for a 14-year period, therefore negotiable year upon year after that. He also donated a substantial sum of money to actually construct the bowling green and what became the first pavilion. Richard Ellis said he would like and thought it would be right and proper for the older gentlemen of the village to have somewhere to play bowls of a nice summer's evening. How quaint was that, really? I think probably looking at it more cynically, he wanted to keep the people out of the pub. But there we go. Anyway, a committee got together in the Bear Public House in 1921, and a committee was set up of 9 people to basically go through the process of establishing and getting a course built ready for launch in June 1922. Work commenced early in 1922, and 2 guys were immediately employed to do the donkey work. And they basically put back to elbow to grease or back to bone, whatever, and did all the site preparation and what have you. Sand was brought down from the Norfolk coast, and ashes were laid as a foundation for the green. Richard Ellis provided turf from one of his paddocks. I know no more than that, but one of his paddocks. So you can well imagine, by the time the green was laid, it resembled probably a refined plough field. It was by no means what you'd recognise a bowling green to be today. However, they did meet their deadline, and the course opened, or rather the green opened on the 17th of June in 1922. The green was actually a 5-ring green. For those of you who are not familiar with the term rink, basically a green is split up into what are defined as rinks. Most greens have 6 rinks, and that enables, in effect, 6 games of bowls to be played simultaneously. In this instance, the green wasn't big enough for 6, so we had to settle for 5. At the time of opening, the membership was 73, but there were no ladies, it was men only. The annual membership was 10 and 6. Now, I can barely remember old money, but rest assured, the average weekly wage then for a skilled employee was about £2 per week. For a non-skilled, or perhaps a farm labourer, was less than that. So 10 and 6 for a season, which is only 6 months, bear in mind, was quite a lot of money. This motley crew are the founding members. Note the design of hats. In the centre of the picture is Richard Ellis, rather sandwiched in there and doesn't befit the president, but never mind. To his right, or is he to our left as we're looking at it, is Admiral Haggard, and this rather imposing looking gentleman with a mortarboard on, heavens knows why he's got a mortarboard on, is the club captain, Mr. Taylor. Now the reason for putting this up, apart from the amusement effect, is that 2 things. Firstly, in these days, these guys, they didn't have their own equipment. The woods were borrowed from the club, and all the equipment was borrowed from the club. And I have here a couple of probably original style woods, which are made out of wood, as the name would suggest. I'll pass those around anyway. Coupled with that, if you know their dress, quite literally they used to come in from work and go and play bowls. There was nothing like what I'm dressed in now, which is the official bowls gear. They quite literally wore their street clothes. Now, I don't know if you can imagine playing bowls on a hot summer's day with a jacket, waistcoat, tie, shirt, hat probably, heavy old shoes, because they didn't wear proper bowling shoes then, they wore their normal street shoes. Quite a cumbersome affair. But anyway, what a fine body of men they are. In the early days, Stock Club, although it's always been called Stock and Buttery Bowling Club, was actually nicknamed the Farmers Club, because a good proportion of these people here were probably local landowners and indeed farmers. So as we move into the early 20s, we certainly decided that we needed a clubhouse. And along came our knight in white shining armour, Mr. Ellis, and stomped up the cash basically for a clubhouse. It was a bit of a modest affair, 25 by 12 with a 5-foot veranda. It cost £100 though, which was as much as what the whole of the green cost to lay and build. Although I have to be honest, this isn't a picture taken in 1924, it was a little bit after, but if you'll allow me a little bit of artistic licence, to all intents and purposes, that was the original clubhouse, and it remained the same apart from a few internal changes right through to 1978. So it was a pretty modest affair. But I seem to think that it bears a striking resemblance to the old cricket club pavilion looked like. So perhaps there was yeah. Anyway, in 1926, for the ladies here, they'll be pleased to know that ladies were admitted as members. There were 18 to start with. However, their activities were strictly curtailed, and they were only allowed to play on weekday afternoons. And if you remember what I was saying just now about rinks, they indeed were only allowed to play on one rink. Presumably as far away from the clubhouse as possible, but I don't know. Now, as with all clubs, memberships ebb and flow, and in the 20s, if you remember, well, no, you won't remember, I'm sure many of you, but just to remind you, the 20s were, in the very early part, years of, well, we're getting over the First World War, let's be thankful, praiseful of that, and hedonistic days in the very early 20s, but of course they were soon met by days of austerity, economic decline, and economic hardship. Now that sounds familiar. And of course, as a net result of that, membership dwindled from 70, in excess of 70, down to sort of 35 to 50. And the accounts, from what I can see from reading through some of the paperwork, barely got into the black on many occasions in that period, which was a bit of a dark period. However, they did find sufficient money in 1938 to extend the clubhouse for what was defined in the minutes as ladies' accommodation. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means. It wasn't accommodation for ladies' comfort, I don't think. It was probably just somewhere where they could change and perhaps be away from the men. Of course, the war period, the club remained open, but the activity of the club actually sort of dwindled quite considerably. As one might expect, a lot of the men folk disappeared off to the war, etc. And unfortunately, in 1945, the benefactor and first president, Richard Ellis, died. So after the war, unfortunately, things were very difficult, and membership continued to fall, and it fell as low as 22. I think, as far as I can work out, that was the lowest membership that Stock Bowls Club had. And even raising a team at that point became increasingly difficult. However, a major turning point was in 1950. The estate of the late Richard Ellis, I think probably the chief executive was Admiral Haggard, decided that they would make available the freehold of the land that had been leased for many years for the Bowls Club to purchase. I believe there was a bit of toing and froing and a bit of negotiating, but at the end of the day, a sum of £75 plus costs was arrived at for the sale of the freehold of the land and the clubhouse and everything that therefore went on it, which doesn't sound very much money really, does it? But considering how much it might potentially be worth today. The money that was paid for the freehold was made up of donations from club members, but a mysterious donation by Truman's Brewery. Now, I don't know the reason for this, and I can only surmise that because the clubhouse didn't have any facilities, i.e. didn't have any running water, sanitation, kitchen, electricity or anything, the members had to use the facilities at the Baker's Arms, which of course was immediately adjacent, for everything that they needed. So perhaps as a debt of gratitude, Truman's Brewery offered to put up some money. I like to think that anyway, that sounds quite nice, doesn't it?
They had a special gate through from the...
That's right, there was a gate, and apparently, according to some of the minutes, the bowlers were regularly heckled by the drunks from the pub. Thank you very much there, Robert, that was very kind. Anyway, in 1952, membership still continued to dwindle and ebbed and flowed, and someone at the annual general meeting in 1952 actually suggested that perhaps the Bowls Club amalgamated with the Cricket Club. Apparently that was met with howls of derision and was quickly dismissed, and to my knowledge has never been raised again. But never say never, I guess. Anyway, in 1955, a bit of a lifeline really, a mystery donor left £100 to the club. They enabled the club to move into more of the modern era and laid on electricity, sanitation, water, put in a kitchen. The clubhouse got a coat of paint and some fences were put up around the green area and sort of moved on. Anyway, in 1955, the ladies gained equal rights, a major milestone for the ladies. And of course, that comes at a price, and unfortunately the ladies who had been subject to a discount of their membership had to pay the full membership. And there we go, such is life. And in 1955 saw the inauguration of an annual fixture in the bowling calendar for the men against Billericay. This is still played for today, and it's called the Lifebuoy. And someone saw me earlier on bringing the Lifebuoy in. This is the genuine trophy, and around the outside you can see black, blurred black probably from the back, but in essence they are the dates on which either Stock or Billericay have won it. Well, to save you the agonisation of looking at it, I'll tell you. Stock have won it 25 times, and for the mathematicians around, of course, that would say that Billericay have won it 30. I'm pleased to report that Stock won it last year, and we intend to win it again this year. But it's an annual trophy. Now, I'm not entirely sure, and Ben might be able to help me out, but I'm not entirely sure where the name the Lifebuoy came from. However, I can only surmise that it's something to do with the fact that Billericay Bowls Club is right beside Lake Meadows, or in Lake Meadows, beside the lake. The lake is surrounded by life buoys in case someone falls in, and that's how it started. I don't know, but my guess is that. Anyway, another major milestone. In 1958, the Bowls Club got its first motorised lawn mower. Now, that may sound pretty trivial by today's standards, but I guess by then, and bearing in mind that the green was maintained by club members. All the maintenance was done by the club members. I'm sure whoever had to push that mower up and down was actually really grateful of having a motorised one. So the first mower came in there. Well, that comes with a downside, of course, and the men had their knuckles wrapped and were asked to smarten up a bit. And the committee decided that the men must at very least wear a club tie for club games. Sounds fairly trivial, doesn't it? But given that they probably were wearing anything they wanted to, that was a bit of a milestone. Anyway, in 61, the year I was born, a piece of land was offered to the Bowls Club free of charge by someone that probably many people in the room will know, Sir Jim Strachan. He was a builder and property developer, and became president of Stock Bowls Club from 73 to 5, and then again in 79. Let me show you this. Just so you get your orientation right. Main road, the High Street, the bowling club area as you know it now, the Baker's Arms here, cricket pitch over here. These houses here are the paddocks. Yeah. This strip of land, albeit it looks fairly inconsequential, is actually quite important to the Bowls Club because it enabled the green to be extended to make 6 rinks. Now, I'm not sure if I'm talking out of turn here, but anecdotally I've heard, it's not in the minutes of any meetings, but anecdotally, when these houses here in the paddocks were built, Mr. Strachan was faced with a bit of a dilemma in that he had to potentially put drainage out to meet the mains drainage, which was in the High Street over here. And that was going to be a fairly costly affair. So, he gave this bit of land to the Bowls Club, but in unwritten understanding, he could put his drainage through here and across to Common Road, which would have been considerably cheaper. Now, he was a businessman after all, and most businessmen don't do something for nothing. Now, whether that's right or not, I won't say any more, but that's anecdotal. So, Stock got a piece of land for free, and were able to extend the green, which is all important in today's game anyway. In 1966, the club got an official blazer badge. You probably saw me wearing my blazer. That's what it looks like. Quite a fine badge, I think. And obviously it's a depiction of Stock Windmill. In 1972, the club celebrated its jubilee, and there were various celebrations accordingly in terms of invitational matches from clubs around Essex and probably outside of Essex. Great festivities, including a big dinner and lots of social events and social evenings and so on to celebrate that. In the same year, the men got it wrapped over the knuckles again and the dress code was revised, and basically men were asked to wear white shirts, ties and grey flannels when they were playing. So basically what I've got on here. Stock is quite unusual in that respect, in that we are pretty strict with this. We do wear shirts with a motif on for club matches, for league matches, but in the main this is the attire that we adhere to. Some other clubs are more relaxed than us and they wear polo shirts with their own motifs on and so on and so forth, but here in Stock we're still fairly traditional. In about 1975, someone came up with the idea of, hey, we need a new clubhouse. And apparently between 1975 and 1978 there was an absolute huge amount of debate on the subject. People resigned from the committee, they came back on the committee, they resigned again. There was a major furore over it. Yes, we want it, no we don't, so on and so forth. Anyway, the culmination of that was in 1978, it was decided by a special committee meeting that yes, a new clubhouse was desired. So that was discussed and decided to go ahead. Early estimations were it was going to cost around about £11,000 to build. Funds were raised by a lot of hard work from the club members at the time, and I think there was a 200 club, what's called 200 club formed, where members gave money and bought in effect a part share of the new clubhouse. I think that was probably a similar way that things were done with the cricket club, Colin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Quite a standard practice, I think, when trying to raise money. Yeah. But anyway, I'm pleased to say that in 1979 the new clubhouse opened. In 1981, hey, we got a bar. That's really good. And in 1989, would you believe the clubhouse actually got some heating? Which I'm sure was welcome to some people. In 1992, I guess, it was a year tinged with sadness in a way, because the green maintenance and what have you was actually farmed out and contracted out to Chelmsford Borough Council. Quite sad from the respect that for all of the years that the club had been opened, 70 years by that stage, it had all been done by the club members. But I guess owing to the ageing age profile of the membership and perhaps the skills that go with having to maintain the bowls green, it was felt that it would be better done by an outside body. So Chelmsford Borough Council took it on, and in fact they continue to do that right to this day, and do a very good job, I might say. The other maintenance within the club, around the green and the clubhouse and so on, is still conducted by the members, and we have regular working parties that conduct that type of operation. In 1993, the club actually became a no-smoking club in terms of smoking within the clubhouse. So they were well ahead of the national no-smoking ban. I'm not quite sure how that came about, but nevertheless it did. And in 1996, given all those years back in the 20s and the 30s where the membership was struggling and so on and so forth, membership was now at 159 people, men, women and some non-playing people, with a waiting list of nearly 100 people. Would you believe that? And subscriptions were about £50 a year, so they'd gone a long way from being 10 and 6, hadn't they? In 1997 saw the 75th anniversary of the club, and the committee decided to set aside some money to celebrate, and that they did, and apparently had a very good time. And really from then until now, there's been a period of relative quietness and tranquility within the club. And the club continues to prosper, really. It's had success at both county and district level. And we have recently been trying to go on a bit of a recruitment drive to get some new members in and indeed some younger members. And that has paid dividends to an extent, although it's a job in progress, I guess. Coming right up to date, and for this forthcoming season, which starts in about 2.5 weeks' time, membership for this year will be 65 men, around about 40 ladies, and about 25 non-playing people who take part in the social side of things. Annual subscription is now £95 a year. And the club is well represented by both men and women at both county and district levels. So we've got some pretty reasonable standard bowling going on here in the village, which is pleasing to note. and we can certainly hold our own with regards to playing against some of the larger clubs and the more competitive clubs in the district. And as with always, there's a need to boost the coffers by having an active social scene, and coffee nights and quizzes and greyhound racing and theatre trips are part of the curriculum that form that. So that's pleasing to see as well. And finally, and I don't want this to appear to be an advert as such, because there is an element of seriousness about this. The Bowls really has something to offer to everybody, because and the way I've listed it here is almost in a ranking of competitiveness. We have members that like to come up for what we call a roll-up, and it's quite literally you roll up, and if there's someone there, you can have a game, you can play for as long or as little as you want, and just have a bit of an enjoyment. Great stuff, really. The club has club evenings where a lot of members get together. Again, it's pretty informal, might be a small prize to play for, bite to eat afterwards, jolly good. The club can offer tuition to new bowlers. There are various bowlers within the club that are trained in offering tuition to new bowlers. The club has a very active programme of what are called club friendlies. So this is playing against other clubs, either home or potentially away. Men on their own, ladies on their own, or both mixed. We have league matches, either for men on their own, ladies on their own, or indeed mixed again. So there's something to cater for all tastes, ranging through to probably the more competitive angle where there are county competitions where you're playing for the big prizes within the county for men and women. Although that isn't actually mixed, but there are club games there as well. And there are society games which again are more light-hearted, or invitational games where other clubs invite people to come and play in competitions and so on. So there's something for everybody there. And at the end of the day, we welcome new bowlers of all ages, all experiences, and I'm not sure if we've got one coming up for this year, but there may well be an open day, and if you want to come along, have a go, please feel free. And that's all I really had to say. Thank you very much for your time and attention.